Hi, this is Dr. Corey Stack. Sorry, I deleted that last video, but I probably should have. The title of this probably is more appropriate. It's called Denied My Own Records, Shut Out of the Courts, a Justice and Human Rights Issue. It's extremely serious. I mean, there's no question. What I'm talking about is extremely serious. And I don't know how I've survived it, to be honest. Nobody would have survived what I've been subjected to. It's cruelty beyond, any description. Absolute abject cruelty, and the level and the layers of it and the amount of it is beggars belief. But anyway, let's try and reduce it down to one area. I want to speak today about today carefully responsibility and on the record. What I am asking for is very simple: access to certain key records that I need to understand why certain things happen, including why I felt that my nomination for the presidential election was seriously interfered with or hampered through the blocking mechanism, and to understand, was it because of the manipulation of certain records that I was the target. So I'm trying to eliminate myself as a process of elimination to acquiring my records, and these are being at the moment withheld. And every excuse has been given to withhold them, suggesting something's been hidden. And yet over a significant period of time, that access has been denied. I'm seeking access to my personal records held by Tusla and to my personal records held on the Pulse. Now, this is very similar to what happened to Maurice McCabe. Despite repeated and sustained efforts, these records have not been disclosed to me, and no clear or lawful explanation has been provided. Before going any further, I want to make something very clear. My work in protective disclosures, that's the whistleblowing, including my long-standing work and recent work on acts of omission, represents only one area of a much broader and long-standing body of research and scholarship. As can be seen from our collective works, my interests extend well beyond protective disclosures. They include many other areas: mathematics education reform, access to justice, procedural fairness, institutional accountability, human rights protection, safeguards for vulnerable individuals, the interaction between law, power and exclusion, systemic failure, and the denial of effective remedies. Protective disclosures are not my sole focus. They're only one lens through which broader justice issues have become visible. Why omissions mattered. My recent work on omissions arose because omissions in law are uniquely dangerous. I mean, the more I have understood the whole concept of omission, the more I understand it. They allow serious failures to occur without ever anyone acting. Failure to act. And it's very clever. And yet without any clear pathway now in the new amended Act for accountability. It became very clear to me that under the original Protective Disclosures Act, actually just retrospectively looking at it now, disclosures concerning omissions could be tested before a court. Well, I knew that then. But now, under the amended Act, that pathway is now effectively disclosed. Now, I made two protective disclosures to the Minister that have now both left Ireland, Mr. Pascal O'Donoghue and Minister McGrath. Both of them found a way to, circumvent saying that my paper should have been protected under the old Act, which it should have been. Both, there was no question it met minimum statutory requirements, but it would have been very embarrassing for the state to admit that those, what resulted from an investigation. But that was not the point. Their duty was to protect it. Instead, what they did was amend the Act to ensure that paper could never reach the light of day in a court and be protected, because it alleged very serious acts of omissions, concerning many authorities, many probably which didn't even know that these omissions were there. So that many of them weren't probably aware of the extent of the omissions in the protective disclosures regime. This is not a niche concern, but even at the time, I wasn't aware of how explosive this research was. But I knew it should be sorted out, and it needed court adjudication to sort it out in some way. But that's not what the decision was made by the various people involved, who are consulted. It has implications across many areas of law and governance.
This is why this issue appears in my recent papers, not because it is my only interest, no, because it exposes a structural weakness with wide consequence. Now, what really concerns me is that I have tried to get records under the FOI for the correspondences with both Mr. O'Donoghue and Mr. McGrath, and I cannot get them. So even they close that line off, and that's not closed off for in other European countries. It's not considered private. It's considered private to yourself, but not to anybody else. But that line is closed off, so that I can't say I got these letters and emails, because they will not. They have them, but they won't give them to me because they've actually designed the act so that I can't have them. I mean, does not that appear retaliation, a severe part of whistleblowing retaliation in itself? I want to be very clear. I'm not asserting why my records have been withheld. Well, one can add one and one if you want. I'm not accusing any individual or institution of wrongdoing. Well, I'm just saying what happened. However, in my opinion, the prolonged absence of transparency raises legitimate questions, and the closing off of so many avenues. For example, the courts now can't examine any kind of disclosure of omissions under a protective disclosures concern. And sure, that would put my paper in that direction. Now it can go in no direction where it can be. So, but it's not just for me, it's in the public interest. How many other people in the same position have been affected because my paper was so exposed? But at the time, I simply didn't realise how good it was, I suppose, or how forensic it was. I didn't realise I was incredibly forensic, but I actually was not aware of how lethal that paper was. I mean, genuinely, I wasn't. And I suppose the boys thought she's a bit of an innocent one, and we'll pull the wool over her eyes. She's no solicitor, allegedly. And now they're gone, both of them. They were probably, without access to one's own records, it's impossible to correct errors or challenge inaccuracies or protect oneself from downstream consequences. Exactly. If anyone has a better explanation, I genuinely welcome it. This matters because even a minor issue on a police record, whether arising for error, misunderstanding, or deliberate manipulation, can have profound consequences. It can affect international travel, visa eligibility. For example, I wanted to go to India to collect my a big award recently, and this could have gone against me. The fact that there could have been problems with my policy. In the end, I couldn't afford to go. But if I wanted to get that visa, would these alleged improper records have gone against me to kind of stitch me up in a kind of whistleblowing way? Because just whistleblowing retaliation, employment, reputation, personal dignity. These are human rights issues, not technicalities. Procedural blockage. It's also my belief, and again, this belief is a belief, not an allegation, that the procedural routes available to me were blocked, not necessarily for any single reason, but a way that ultimately prevented meaningful legal scrutiny. When access to records is denied and access to courts is restricted, justice becomes illusory. And also, it's very clear to me, since I was a presidential hopeful, that the word could have gone around, the records are, could cause us problems. So this person definitely has to be blocked. Whatever about anybody else, this person has to be blocked, because those records would suggest that she couldn't travel abroad, even though they were all manipulations allegedly, as part of the whistleblower. But whether this was, and anyway, this whistleblower, if it ever came out, it would have shown, that the government made mistakes. And so the government made mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. Mistakes were made. Perhaps the initial act was too powerful, and this is how. But to render it powerless is another, and then to do it as a retaliation against one person's research, who I didn't even realise this research was so explosive. So I mean, it wasn't, I wasn't doing anything to whistleblow on the Whistleblowing Act. I think I said it, but it wasn't. I didn't mean it like that. I just mean to disclose. I didn't mean it in any kind of whistleblowing way. I meant it in a research capacity, in any future court proceedings. So this is what I'm saying now, that in any future court proceedings or any proceedings of such nature, any person adjudicating in my case will be required to formally confirm that they have no conflict of interest using whatever lawful procedures are available. This is not hypothetical. Conflicts of interest, as we saw by the brilliant and exceptionally good Mr. Micheál Higgins, who did not have any conflict of interest. So he was not in this circle of people who were, against me in this way, have previously resulted in serious objections to judgments and have been treated with exceptional seriousness in judicial commentary. Impartiality is foundation. So this video is not about grievance. In fact, almost everywhere you go now to have your issues investigated, there's a block. I mean, it's ingenious, the amount of blocks. I mean, this is not human rights. This is deprivation of human rights. It's about justice. It's about the right to see one's own records, the right to an impartial tribunal, the right to effective remedies, and the right to ask difficult questions without being excluded from the legal system, which, in fact, I feel I am, because I can't get any solicitor to help me. So, I mean, the Gardaí know this, if they're implicated. So they're all, it's like closing of the ranks on a massive scale, allegedly. My work spans many justice and human rights issues. Protective disclosures, particularly omissions, are only one part of that wider landscape. And I'm paying a huge price for doing that research, not realising the consequences for myself. I mean, I didn't do it to do anything bad or anything like that. There was no vindictiveness in what I was doing or anything. It was pure and utter research. But where the law closes its doors, where transparency is denied, and where remedies are blocked, those issues must be addressed. These matters must be resolved and sorted, not just for me, but for the integrity of the system itself. And so this man comes along and, every so often, and he makes very serious allegations on YouTube. I'm almost certain it's a stitch up, and I've had a bit of Airbnb here, and, within a short time I recognised the person was an investigator, and I said, you're a private investigator, and I still haven't got the answers as to why I haven't, why this person. So people have been spying on me for a long time. And of course, if you are, a target, and I've also asked the question about, the data protection breach in Dublin Airport in August, because I was away at that time. Had that anything to do with me? Am I, was I seen as some major kind of threat? I'm not a threat at all. I'm not a threat. I'm just a very ordinary person who's exceptionally intelligent, very knowledgeable, highly knowledgeable, very educated to a very high level, but worked very hard. And now I'm producing amazing research. But that's because of years and years of all of this. So all of this, carry on has led to me becoming, a masterful, brilliant researcher. Well, that's the way it is. The world may, all these tactics and stitch-ups and frames and everything has me questioning this, that and the other and all the systems. And so the result of it is a huge volume of phenomenal research that I thought I'd never do. But I suppose if these actors didn't carry on the way they did, maybe I'd never investigate all of these things. So perhaps in some kind of a twisted way, I have some kind of credit to them for challenging me to figure out their game. But the game now from now on has to be the straight game. None of this acting, or it has to be straight. So the game has to be straight from now on, and perhaps from now on, if the game is straight, the world will be a better place. So I'm not vindictive as a person, but I'm just explaining it as it is, and as I believe it is. I'm extremely good at patterns. So this fellow that comes on is obviously paid. He's a paid actor, and he's not the first one. The first paid actor that has been in the script, as I call it, the script. There's been many scripts applied to me over the years, and the recent court judgment appeared to me like it was premeditated a script, but that's to be that's alleged. Of course, it's alleged, but I mean, there's a time when you have to speak your truth, and you have to say, that the way you've been treated is despicable in the extreme. On the other hand, if you live in the past and you don't say, well, the past is the past, and where I am today, perhaps I wouldn't be because of what happened to me, but it was a huge price to pay, a massive price to pay thus far. And I'd ask the powers that be now that are responsible for what they did to me to reflect and to realise the harm they've done to me, and particularly to my children and family. I mean, what they did to my children is unbelievable. As part of this vendetta against me. And I thought it was one legal family, but in fact there was multiple very senior people involved in this vendetta against me, and it was really all whistleblowing retaliation, and that's a tiny part, really, or a small part of the research that I do. Whether I would have done this other research as a result of what happened, perhaps all that happened to me has led me to doing this research in the benefit of the public interest. It's not about me, it's curiosity-driven research and trying to understand what happened to me and putting myself in the shoes of anybody in my position, and then looking for solution possibilities that will ensure that what happened to me won't happen to anybody again. And I mean, people say that time and time again, but unless there's systemic changes, it's not just financial compensation. It's systemic changes, in my opinion, to the justice system as I outlined. There will be several people in my position going forward that will suffer hugely, as I have over the last 10, 15, 20 years. So I'm very fortunate, and also I believe there's several stitch-ups going along with regard to family relatives who are being stitched up and framed and are not being sorted in the way they should be sorted, in order to, again, put a perception that I'm of a particular category, and it's only time and all of this stitch up. And it's so hard to find anyone to complain to, and really everybody is so in fear. People are so in fear in this country, and somebody said there's no democracy, and perhaps that's the one thing I've taken from this video series, this loud voice, there's no democracy. And it seems to me that if there's no democracy, perhaps we should think of a new party, for example, the Democratic Renewal Party, or something like that. Something like that. A party of democratic renewal, or the Democratic Renewal Party. And that suggests in itself that the party needs democratic renewal regularly. So it needs to, it cannot stay static. So that, so it can't, someone said that the problem with the current government is they've got lazy, in inverted commas. So that's what happens perhaps when you're in power for too long. So I have no personal vendetta against anybody in the government or anybody in the Gardaí or anybody like that, but the way I've been treated is absolutely horrific. But the output and the research that I've outputted as a result of the way I've been treated is absolutely phenomenal, and that's what probably none of them expected that I'd end up with. Well, I was always supposed to have been exceptionally talented, except that I was learning a lot and I didn't have time because of the responsibilities that I have to really excel in the way that I should have at a much earlier stage in my career, or in a way that would have got me up the ladder. But I was never one to play the game, so that was never possibly, playing the game was never the way I did my business. And I meet so many people and they say the reason, that I haven't promoted is I don't play the game. Well, maybe it's time that Ireland stopped, giving people who play the game, more of opportunities than those that didn't. And maybe people that play the game, people like me who don't play the game, wouldn't end up exposing so many who do. And it's not what I want to do, but I have to do it. For my own protection. But I'm not vindictive, and I'd like to see things moving forward positively for everybody. And although I have suffered hugely, and particularly people belonging to me and my children in particular, I still feel that we should focus on better times ahead, and moving forward. So despite all of the grief I've suffered, the huge humiliation I've suffered over many years, and those responsible know what they've done. They know how they've rigged the game. And I know I've suffered incredible epistemic justice. But every time they did it, I rose up, and I rose up, and I rose up, and I rose higher. So they're not going to beat me. However, this is not the game I want to be in. This is not justice. I have not received justice. I have not received fairness. I have experienced years of whistleblowing, retaliation, years of discrimination because of not playing the game. And then, I have an outstanding, record now of research. And that in itself will be used against me because there isn't anybody else around that has anything close to the research record I have. And perhaps if all of this carry on didn't happen, I wouldn't have that record. So that's the irony of the whole lot. Really, it's strangely ironic. that all of this has led to me having a phenomenal career, that even the High Court Justice, the Chief High Court Justice, or the President of the High Court, they don't have it. No, they don't have my research record. They don't. And they will not have ever the impact on but they will have through their alleged behaviour, alleged, I don't know. There are people behind the scenes, influencing recent judgments, and they can only be senior people in the High Court and the Supreme Court, but that's all alleged. But look, I'm the one that has the research record, but they're the ones that, perhaps influence decisions against me, but that's all alleged. It's all alleged. But I've witnessed several High Court cases, and I have seen that, that there had to have been, phone calls made to X, Y, and Z behind the scenes, and you can only say that they're just senior people. And people have come out now and said things, and I've looked at a lot of different cases. So all of this is alleged. But I bear no ill will against these people, but I have suffered terribly, more, as much, if not more, than Maurice McCabe. At least he had Michael McDougall. All I had was myself and my brain and a few people who believed in me, and that made such a difference. And I have to say, the likes of that Justice O'Higgins and Seamus Noonan, those people I went into, and they were so decent. And there are exceptionally good judges there, so we can't label all with the same brush. But I have to say, there are serious problems with access to justice and with the treatment of lay litigants, and also with state, with people who take applications against the state, and the judges need to stand up for what they were. They were paid to represent the citizens, not the people who appointed them, and that's what they've got to do going forward. They've got to, the balance has got to go in favour of the people, not the person that paid them. There's too much of that going on, and why should it really go on for the judges? Sure, those judges are there indefinitely. They don't have to fear, being sacked. And the Judicial Act, sure, rather the world, sure, it's worth the paper it's written on in terms of accountability, in my opinion. So I'm not saying that should be. I think it should be changed, but who's going to change it? So my concern is that the future should be better than the past, and that the way I've been treated, it's horrific. Nevertheless, I've survived to tell the tale, and all these adverse challenges and things like this have, I've been very fortunate in that I've learned, and it has enabled me to figure the whole thing out. So all I'm asking is, can I have my pulse record so that I can see, have they been manipulated, and was it me that the government blocked because of my work on protective disclosures, which was purely research based on asking a question: what is an act of omission law?